Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Valentine's just dumb, okay? But I got a little date going on tonight. Yeah, I got a little date coming on.
I might go to a movie, maybe, but nothing crazy. I know some guys have their girlfriends, they might do something tonight, but other than that, I'm not really a fan of Valentine's Day.
And what better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than tuning in to Tider Insider TV right here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome into TITV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Brandon Kamerman. Gary still out resting his vocal cords a little bit, hoping that we can get him back soon, because I know Gary's itching to get back here and talk some more Alabama athletics. But of course, Buffalo Rock today, we've got your standard good old blue Pepsi. Oh, that's good. Baseball season opening this weekend. We'll get to that coming up. But more recent Alabama football news: the winner of the 2016 Lombardi Trophy, Alabama's very own Jonathan Allen. Of course, Allen basically swept almost every award you could win. A lot of people were disappointed he didn't get the Heisman Trophy or even get an invite to the Heisman ceremony. But man, he took care of business in all the other awards.
He really did. Well deserved.
That's right. He exemplifies everything that award embodies. Well, I hate to have to start out with bad news on TITV, but there's good news coming up. We'll get to that. As for the bad news, Alabama offensive lineman Lester Cotton arrested Friday night for possession of marijuana. The junior from Central High School in Tuscaloosa was pulled over near campus when officers smelled the drug. Cotton was charged with possession, eventually released on bond. Alabama Athletics issued a statement saying, "We are in the process of determining facts. In this situation, we will discipline internally like we have in the past." So again, not a good off-season story, Rodney, for us to talk about. You have a guy who's probably going to try and compete to get back into the starting rotation on the offensive line. Not good news here for Lester Cotton. What's your take?
Yeah, in that regard, in terms of those types of issues, there haven't been many so far in the offseason, and that's not a good one there for him. And, you know, Lester obviously started some games last year, has an opportunity to be a really outstanding player. And again, as we know, we've seen these things happen before where they're handled internally, and I think eventually we'll see him back on the field if he does what he's probably going to be asked to do, which are things that are not going to be revealed publicly for sure.
Sure, and one of the stories, of course, we saw, you see Cam Robinson right there, was Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones' story that happened last year, that they were disciplined internally as well. Well, it didn't ultimately affect playing time in the sense Cam Robinson started every single game. Cotton was going to have to compete for a starting role anyways, but do you think this has any effect on him playing coming next season?
Well, probably not. I mean, I would think whatever they have for him to do and to complete and those types of things, as long as he does it, he will certainly have an opportunity to regain his status in terms of competing for a starting job, whether it be at right guard, right tackle, whatever it might be. But I would think certainly that he will have that opportunity.
I said there will be good news. There is. The Crimson Tide added 4 signees to its early enrollee list today. Joining the football team this spring, quarterback Mac Jones, defensive backs Xavier McKinney and Daniel Wright, and running back Brian Robinson. We previously discussed just how good this early enrollee class, let alone how good the overall signing class is. But the early enrollees, well, they get 4 right here. Let's quickly touch on the 4. Yeah. Then I want to go in a little further on these 4. But again, Brian Robinson, Daniel Wright, Xavier McKinney, and quarterback Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look at those 4 now, they have 16 in here. All 4 of those are really obviously very high quality players. You look at Mac Jones, he gives Alabama another quarterback. They only had 2 going through spring practice, Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. And Robinson, of course, is an outstanding running back here locally. But the 2 safeties, you mentioned Xavier McKinney and Daniel Wright, I think it's really big to get them in here and get them going early, too.
Now, you mentioned Mac Jones. We're seeing some video there of Mac Jones, the quarterback out of the Bowl School in Jacksonville. He adds now to an interesting quarterback group with, of course, the return of Jalen Hurts. You have Tagovailoa, as you mentioned, one of the highly rated quarterbacks in this class. A lot of people have been talking about it, a possible quarterback controversy. They're all going to be able to compete in spring ball. That's the good thing. Do you see this as a controversy?
No. I mean, you know, you have the guy coming back. There's a true freshman that was the SEC Freshman of the Year, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, which is an incredible thing. I don't think there's been anything like that since Herschel Walker did it in 1980. Counted for 36 touchdowns. That's a school record. Now, are there areas that Jalen Hurts has to improve, especially in the passing game? Most certainly. Could Tua or Mac Jones or both push him? Yes, they probably could certainly add some really good competition in the spring. But to sit here and say it's a controversy, I wouldn't think that would be the word I would use. I would just say that this quarterback situation has gotten a lot better with those young guys.
And you point out the positive. I think a lot of fans, from what I've been seeing, I think you've probably seen a lot of people talking about this issue as well, maybe are looking at it from a negative perspective as, you know, could Jalen lose his job? Could so-and-so take it? It's a good thing to have a lot of talented players competing.
Absolutely it is. And again, I think the biggest thing with these quarterbacks is, obviously Jalen Hurts has experience. He's still very, very young, still has a lot of areas to grow, and Alabama's still looking for that offensive coordinator. So whoever it is that's going to be in charge of developing these quarterbacks, he has a lot of inexperience on his hands, a lot of developing to do.
And don't worry, we'll get to the offensive coordinator coming up. But still to come on TITV, the Alabama men's basketball team is back on the road after Saturday's home loss to Kentucky. Plus, opening weekend for baseball starts Friday. We'll have more on the new era at the new Joe. And coming up, as always, take your phone calls, emails, tweets. You see the information. You can also catch us on Twitter at #TITV. Go there right now, and we'll take your phone calls coming up. We'll be right back on TITV after the break.
Everybody thinks college basketball is a second half league. It's just as important to get off to a good start, and that's what's going to be a big key for us at Missouri.
That was men's basketball coach Avery Johnson talking about the Crimson Tide's upcoming game at Missouri tomorrow night. The Tide fell to Kentucky on Saturday, 67-58. Get this, Alabama finished 9 for 26 from the free throw line. It's going to be tough to ever beat Kentucky finishing 9 for 26. It's kind of been up and down for the Tide, sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It certainly has been an improvement this season from last season, from Avery Johnson's first season. 12 games into Pac-12 play, the Alabama basketball team is 7-5. How do you evaluate it at this point?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that they've gotten off to a good start for the most part in the SEC. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, you know, watching the game against Kentucky, you mentioned it. I mean, you missed some easy shots that they missed. You take those free throws and what were they, 9 of 26?
9
Is that
of
what
26,
they were?
yeah.
Yeah, missed 17 of those. I mean, that's the game right there. I mean, if you hit your free throws, you win the game. So, you know, again, I just think that this team it has really improved. I don't think there's any question. We've seen a lot of progress in this team, and as this roster continues to fill up with players that Avery Johnson's recruited, that stellar class that he's got coming in next year, we're going to see this program take that next step. I truly believe that.
And you're right. We've already seen them sort of take a certain step forward this year. I mean, the win at South Carolina a week ago, I know traditionally South Carolina hasn't been the most intimidating team, but that team was in first place in the SEC, 9-1 at home. Alabama hadn't won a game on the road against the top 25 team in over a decade, so that's a big win. But as I mentioned, kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Take a step back. It was a poor first half against Kentucky just overall. You know, they were able to sort of make a run there in the second half, but overall, you know, you're just not gonna beat Kentucky when you make the mistakes that Alabama made.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans too got their expectations a little high after that win over South Carolina. Certainly, I understand the optimism, but at the same time, you have to be realistic. This is a program that is still building.
Absolutely. Rodney, talking about building. It's almost springtime. Sometimes feels like springtime, but it's actually kind of mid-February, which means, though, baseball is back. Home opener for the Crimson Tide Friday against Presbyterian. Greg Goff's first game as Alabama head coach. The Tide is coming off 32-26 season and looking to improve in 2017.
I just wanted to, you know, just try to simulate game as much as we could. I knew today would be our last day to face a live arm till Friday night. So what we do is a situational scrimmage, winning runs at first base or winning runs at second base, and just try to put our players in that heat. And so, you know, I thought today we did a great job. Our pitchers did a great job, and then we had some timely hitting. So I just like to put guys in those situations because, as you know, for us to win games, those one-run games, those guys have got to perform.
Well, just briefly talking about the baseball season again, a weekend series against Presbyterian. We'll have to see this. Greg Goff era, I can tell you last week was media day at the New Joe. Greg Goff is one of the most likable guys you're going to be around. Very charismatic, really energetic and excited for this season to start. But I guess a lot of fans are just looking at wins and losses, and we'll have to wait and see how that pans out.
Yeah, and again, I think he's bringing a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy. He certainly has a plan. I think he's made that clear. And but, you know, like I said about the basketball program, you're talking about a guy coming in. He's got to have some time to develop this program, you know, with his players coming in. And, you know, that may take a little bit of time, but I think certainly as we look at it right now, from all indications early on, the things that we hear, the things that we see are very positive.
And one thing that should be very positive is their pitching staff return a really strong pitching staff. And speaking of pitching, coming up, we'll hear from Alexis Osorio after pitching a perfect game in the opening weekend for the Alabama softball team. Plus, we're welcoming your phone calls. We're taking them next. Emails, tweets. You see it right there on your screen. Get in touch with us. Rodney and I will be here to answer all your questions about Alabama athletics. Stay tuned. TITV returns right after this.
To watch batter after batter, you know, swing through 3 pitches in a row was just amazing to see. And I wish it could have been at home, so you guys could have seen it, but it was fun to watch.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I love when I can share the moments like that with my teammates. It's just something I'll always remember.
A perfect game in her season debut. She had 19 strikeouts.
That's what you call a good start.
That was a pretty good start, I'd say so. And we'll start with a phone call from Sammy in Walker County. And Sammy, good to have you in. You want to talk some offense?
Yeah, how y'all doing? Rodney and Brandon, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
And, yeah, I've heard the last few weeks about this offensive philosophy, Coach Saban, going back to the spread this way. Hey, let's face it, Coach Saban is a pro, man. He's a pro. That's his background. That's what he does. He's going to throw the ball to his great receivers and utilize them like Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, and Calvin Ridley. We just didn't have that last year. He used what he had, but I'm sure it's going to reflect in the offensive coordinator that he hires. He's a pro guy. He likes to throw the ball. We just got to get some guys that coach him up to be able to do that, because, you know, he probably as a pro coach, pro style, he probably leans on the run more than other pro coaches, but.
Sure, Sammy. Yeah, so Rodney, again, different offense we're going to see maybe slightly next year with potentially, you know, we don't know exactly right now who's going to be the offensive coordinator. Do you think the philosophy will change dramatically from what we saw last year?
Well, I think he's always going to play what his personnel can do best. And I think that, you know, when you look at it, they want to be multiple. They want to be able to utilize all of their personnel, the wide receivers, the running backs. They've got 5 great running backs probably when you stack them all up. And obviously going to have some really very, very talented offensive linemen, have some really good receivers, tight ends, some young tight ends. So I think they want to get all of those guys involved. They want to be multiple. You know, some people say, well, why don't we go to the air raid attack? Well, you know, they're not going to do that, you know, and nor are they going to, you know, run the ball 75 times a game. You know, they want to be balanced. They want to be multiple. They want to utilize all their weapons. And I think sometimes my point is that people get too caught up in, you know, what is the style, you know, what is it termed or whatever. But, you know, again, I just think they want to be multiple in what they do and utilize all their personnel.
All right, we'll head to Harold in Anniston for our next call. Harold, how are you doing?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good.
Hey, Rodney, I looked at both the men's and the women's basketball, man. You know, Christy Curry and Avery Johnson, they both got young teams, man, and they both having problems with turnovers, bad shooting, and bad free throwing. You know, those are characteristics of young teams, and neither one of them were left with what I would call an abundance of riches when they came in. I was wondering, do you think, Rodney, it's going to maybe take 5, maybe 6 years to get that, you know, both programs up to par, man, because they really got to get out there and recruit, man, to get players. That's the lifeblood. They got to get that talent in before these teams, you know, will improve. I want to know what you think, Rodney.
Sure, Harold. And first off, I'll say it might not take 5-6 years to get that big recruiting class, especially for the men's team. Really loaded recruiting class, one of the tops in the country coming in next year. So I think, Avery Johnson, he's still, it's his second year.
Yeah.
He's going to be moving into his third year. Again, he doesn't really have all his guys there yet. He's still establishing a program. And as we mentioned earlier in this program, it's moving in the right direction for the men's basketball team.
Yeah, I think so, certainly. I mean, when you look at that recruiting class, I don't know what it ended up exactly ranked, but it's one of the best in Alabama basketball history in terms of coming in on paper as you look at it. I don't think there's any question about that. You have those kind of recruiting classes, you're going to see your program take that next step. I think in the other things that we've seen, we saw him kind of get those things established last year. They were very competitive in most of their games. They've made a little step this year, and I think next year you're going to see them take that next step at some point.
And as for the women's basketball team, they've also improved. Won a couple road games in the SEC this season. They certainly are on the up and up. That program, she really took over a program that was pretty bare when it had in terms of talent. So I think Christy Curry certainly is still moving, even though she's had a little more time than Avery Johnson, still moving that program, hopefully in the right direction. All right, we'll go to Mary in Tuscaloosa next. Mary, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, thank you.
I got two questions. Okay. Will Lester Cotton be able to play at the beginning of next year since he had been arrested? And my second question is, will they let you take pictures at the 8A game that's coming up?
All right, we'll take your first question, Lester Cotton. We kind of addressed this before. We're still going to have to wait to see how things play out a little bit. My expectation is he will be eligible to play.
Yeah, I think as long as what we assume is that if whatever he has to do to take care of this will be done, he'll do what he has to do to put himself back in a position to compete and play. And I think he'll be out there this spring at some point.
And speaking of spring, as for 8A, I believe you could take pictures. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, you go to the fans,
yeah.
You can absolutely take pictures. Well, we'll take more of your phone calls, emails, tweets. It's all coming up next. Stick with us. TITV returns right after the break. Welcome back to Tighter Insider TV. As expected, we get a lot of questions about the status of the offensive coordinator search, so we're going to go right now to an email, actually, from Ronald in Gadsden. Who do you think will be in the running to become the next offensive coordinator? The million-dollar question, Rodney. Of course, a lot of people are wondering that. What's the latest?
Well, one thing about Nick Saban is you really never know when he might pull someone out of left field, like he did, back in 2008 when Jim McElwain was hired. Nobody really had tossed around McElwain's name, but right now, two of the names that we're really hearing the most would be Brian Daboll, the tight ends coach with the New England Patriots. He's been an offensive coordinator at 3 different NFL teams. And talking to people up there earlier today, I think that he's had opportunities to become offensive coordinator in other NFL organizations as well. But he's one guy to really keep an eye on. George Godsey, who was formerly the offensive coordinator with the Houston Texans, was recently let go. He's another guy that I think his name has certainly been mentioned quite a bit. And that's not to say that there's not other possibilities, including maybe even Michael Oxley, who's just recently promoted as the co-offensive coordinator. Certainly he's an outstanding coach and candidate. But, we'll see which direction Nick Saban decides to go.
And obviously we don't yet know exactly who it's going to be, but in terms of a timeline, we don't know for sure. When do you think Coach Saban would like to get this resolved?
Well, I think he probably wants to be thorough, make sure he checks out all his options, but I would think relatively soon because you want to get your guy in here with the start of spring practice, about a month or less, somewhere in that neighborhood. You want to get your guy in here, get him situated, and kind of get things going in the right direction.
All right, let's take another phone call. Sharon in Hueytown. Sharon.
Yes, thank you for taking my call, and I'd just like for you to comment on the status of Ben Davis and what you think his role may be this coming year on defense, and I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Well, I think, Sharon, one thing to really keep an eye on is spring practice, and let's see how he progresses there. He's really a quality athlete, obviously, from Gordo, not too far from here. His dad was the all-time leading tackler in Alabama football history, Wayne Davis, so he certainly has the bloodlines. And, I really think Wayne Davis is a fantastic athlete, and you never know in terms of how much you progress over that 1 year as a red shirt. It's going to be really interesting to watch Ben Davis and see how he performs. He could play inside. He could possibly play outside. Who knows? He may eventually get big enough to be a guy that puts his hand down quite a bit. So I think this spring will tell us a lot more about his progress, Sharon.
All right, well, still to come, the NFL Combine is 2 weeks away. Former Alabama linebacker Ryan Anderson's going full speed ahead to the NFL. You'll want to see this. We'll be right back. Former Alabama linebacker Ryan Anderson preparing for the NFL. He tweeted this out, and check out the speed demon. I've been on a treadmill before. I don't think I've ever gone quite that fast on a treadmill. Pretty impressive. He should be first or second round pick. ESPN and the University of Alabama announced today that the Golden Flake A-Day game will be televised on ESPN. 2 p.m. Saturday, April 22nd. Crimson Tide, the only SEC team scheduled to have its spring game air on ESPN for 2 consecutive seasons. Of course, A-Day will take place at Bryant-Denny Stadium with admission free to the public, and I believe you can take pictures. 10 former Alabama players have been invited to the NFL Combine. They include Jonathan Allen, Ryan Anderson, Reuben Foster, O.J. Howard, Marlon Humphrey, Eddie Jackson, Cam Robinson, Ardarius Stewart, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Tim Williams. The Combine starts the end of this month on February 28th. I got that
That's a scary
right.
list of players they're losing there.
Incredible.
Wow.
I know. It shows how good they are, and yet they got a lot of them that are going to be there again next year.
That's right.
All right, well, our beautiful shirts, you know it, they're provided by The Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, the home of the original Elephant Wear. Go by, check it out. See Alex Gatewood, his staff. They'll hook you up. There's some great stuff there. Our shirts and ties are there. I wore a jacket today, so you can't see the full shirt, but it's really nice. I can tell you that much. You can see some of it. Looks good in a jacket, looks good without a jacket. Either way, pretty good. I'm filling in for Gary. I should be back here next week. We're hoping Gary gets better. Again, he's got to rest those vocal cords, but he's okay. Just a minor issue there with the vocal cords. Don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can always catch the replay. It's tonight after the 10 o'clock news, 10:30 on WVUA 23. Also, you can go online. It's always there, WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Brandon Kamerman. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here next week. Have a good night.